Hello class, this next lecture is about the Olmecs, or the rubber people as the Aztecs named this civilization. La gente de hule, the people of rubber. The Olmecs emerged in the Gulf of Mexico, specifically in the state of Veracruz and Tabasco, between the years of 2500 before our current era to about 400 before our current era. Some anthropologists mention that they existed until a little bit over 400 before our current era, when they in a lot of cases for indigenous cultures, the indigenous cultures that we're going to be studying, they say that they disappear. Indigenous people did not disappear. They still exist today. What happens to a lot of these civilizations is that there is reasons why they end up leaving city-states or communities, and they found new ones. And I think that that's part of the reason why indigenous cultures of Mesoamerica or Anahuac have very similar or cultural things that they share between one another, and you can see that over and over. In the case of the Olmecs, they do influence many civilizations in Mesoamerica or Anahuac. For a long time, anthropologists debated whether it was the Olmecs or the Mayans that came first. Eventually, the conclusion that was made was that the Olmecs were first. So the Olmecs are rightfully given the title of the mother civilization of Mesoamerica. And this is the first of various lectures that I'm going to be doing, entitled The First Nations of Anahuac. Here I am talking about the Olmec. Next lecture is going to be about the Mayan, and then we'll talk about the other groups like the Teotihuacanos and the Toltec. The Olmecs left behind temples. They left behind mounds, massive sculptures like the one that you're looking at here in this image on the slide. These sculptures are pretty tall. The measurements of these sculptures usually are about 3 meters high when they're large like this one, and they weigh about 8 tons each. Many of these sculptures were not sculptured in the places where they were found. Anthropologists have concluded that they were actually transported from somewhere else to be sculptured where they end up, or they sculpture them where they are today. The Olmecs also left behind evidence that they practice the ball game that is found in many spaces throughout Mesoamerica, places like Teotihuacan, Monte Albán in Oaxaca, Tula o Tolán in Hidalgo, in Mexico, where the Toltecs live. You can also find these ball games in Tajín, in a Totonac place in Veracruz, and definitely the Aztecs also had ball games. The Olmecs were a ancient Mesoamerican culture that have animal representation in all aspects of their culture. They, including religion, including religious beliefs, ceremonies, and all kinds of other practices. Again, the Olmecs are known as the mother culture of Anahuac or Mesoamerica. The first places that where the Olmecs emerged would be La Venta in Tabasco, Laguna de los Cerros in Veracruz, and San Lorenzo near closer to Teotihuacan. They expanded from these three cities, and eventually they founded Tres Zapotes, and they were able to influence, as you can see in this map, many different spaces all the way down to El Salvador, to Honduras, to Guatemala, and many other places out of Veracruz and Tabasco, where they emerged from. What did they trade? They traded things like obsidian, jade, serpentine, mica, rubber, feathers, and mineral mirrors. Their mirrors were made out of various minerals, but mainly obsidian. And this obsidian in their black mirrors were used for medicine, for spiritual medicine. They were also known as spiritual mirrors, and or Tezcatl. There is a deity in the Aztec religion named Tezcatlipoca, or a smoking mirror, named after these black obsidian mirrors that the Olmecs traded and eventually survived in many different cultures, all the way to the Aztecs. I read somewhere that the Queen of England has one of those mirrors that was given to her, and she holds it as a treasure. The Olmecs influence different Mesoamerican cultures, as I mentioned, such as the Mayan, the Teotihuacanos, the Toltec, the Mixtec, and the Zapotec cultures, just to mention a few. There's a map and a closer a close-up. And there has been archaeological findings of Olmec culture, specific Olmec culture in all of these places. The Olmec economy was based on trade and agriculture, so commerce and agriculture. The Olmec were people that lived close to the Gulf Coast, therefore they were fishermen. They had access to rivers, so they not only fish in salt water but also sweet water. They were really good farmers and hunters. Their farming technique included the milpa, which is what you see here on this image here, with a corn with squash growing around it and beans. So these are known as the Three Sisters. This is something that was invented by the Olmecs and was passed down in many of these Mesoamerican cultures, all the way to the Mexican diet today. Other crops included gorse, cotton, possibly the cacao or the tree. Only the elite had access to trading goods, and the people that participated in this trade held a very important place in this society, because they were able to connect and learn about other cultures and bring and take the cultural knowledge to these people. City-states were linked by trade, mainly jade, and I would say also obsidian. The Olmec religion was a religion of many different deities. Religion was part of everyday life in Olmec society. You can see a lot of their deities recorded on different things that led that the Olmecs left behind, like this image that you see here of a jaguar mask made in jade. A lot of these creations of the Olmecs and other indigenous people, they look like they have eyes, but that has a lot to do with the spiritual world. They had an organized religion involving a priesthood, and these shamans or priests had power to turn into animals. In Mexican culture, this is known as nahuales. So they had nahual power to turn into animals. And they also had the power to cure the sick, the people that were sick, both physically and spiritually. They were very important people, and many of these people were buried on mounds with their jade jewelry with other noble people. When people died, the Olmecs believed that the person was divided into three people, into three, and split into three, and each one of those parts of the person would go to a place, which is part of the basic belief that the Olmec religion had, which is we had three different worlds, and one world would be the sky, or the spirit world out there in the universe. The other one would be Earth, and the other one would be the underworld. They would conduct a human sacrifice, and you can see also some of their other ceremonies that they held in caves. They had cave rituals, and you can actually visit Mexico today and see the paintings that they left behind in these caves. They held pilgrimages to places of important spiritual significance. They had celebrations where they gave offerings to medicine people and deities. And they also invented the ball game. They had the first ball games in Mesoamerica. Another aspect of that culture, another aspect of culture that is actually present in most of the Mesoamerican cultures. And you can see that today if you visit these places. The Olmec also ate nuts, animals from the ocean, like I said, fish. They planted and harvested corn and beans and squash at least twice per year, and that allowed them to have a surplus of food most years. Again, they live in a place that was close to the Gulf Coast, mostly jungle, close to water, rivers, and that allowed them to have access to good amounts of food. In mountains, they believe that they could access all three planes from doing mountains. In caves, they believe that they had access to the underworld. They believe in deities that were connected to rain, to corn, to earth, to different animals that they held very sacred above others because of the power that these animals had. And these animals would be jaguars, eagles, caimans, snakes, and sharks. They believe that shamans had the power to, again, shapeshift into these animals, such as jaguars. They believe that shamans or medicine people control the rain, the sun, and the crops, that they had the power to turn into nahuales and could fly and kill enemies from the distance. Again, the jaguars, the eagles, And some of these other animals would be very important for other Anahuac civilizations like the Mayans, the Toltecs, and the Aztecs to this very day. The Olmecs left behind colossal or huge stone heads, and each one of these stone heads has unique facial features. And there is some spaces where these heads are located in specific places, marking the 4 cardinal directions, because the Olmecs believed that the earth was held together by doors, and you can see that in some of their artifacts that they left behind. A lot of them, a lot of the things that they left behind include representations of in jade, in wood, in obsidian. In one of the artifacts, they have something that is known as the God number 4 or the rain baby. They also have seated rulers like this one that you're looking at here. And they believe that when somebody died, they would be buried with their jade. And they believe also that the Olmecs buried some of these things as a offering to travel to the next domain, I guess. The Olmecs believe in something like a sky dragon or a flying snake, which eventually also influences other Mesoamerican cultures. This flying snake or feather serpent would become Quetzalcoatl for the Toltecs, and later on the Aztecs, also for the people of Teotihuacan, and for the Mayan, this would be Kukulkan. In their social life, again, these societies were dominated by priests of the elite class who had very much control of these societies, or the most power in these societies. City-states were independent from one another, yet they gathered for religious celebrations and for things of cultural significance. The social life was present in all these places that we see today in these images here. Common people of the Olmec, they lived in rural areas, usually outside these big urban centers of the time. People like artisans, merchants, warrior class, farmers, and sculptors would live outside of the city. Only the most important people lived in these spaces, these centers, which serve as capitals, but also like ceremonial spaces for the Olmecs. Most city-states had their own languages and customs or variation of languages, but they share certain things in common, depending on their distance from one another. In the arts, just like everything else, the Olmec art is influenced by religion, and they left a lot of these things behind. They produce the most accurate calendars that I'm going to talk about a little bit later, that influence the Mayans, influence the Aztecs, the people of Teotihuacan, the Toltec, and many other people. The Olmec were very good engineers that were able to use land, water, and everything that has to do with nature in their best interest. So they were able to implement engineering ideas and they were good at observing the stars. They were astronomers as well. They were the first Mesoamerican civilization that used the concept of zero. The Olmecs had a huge influence over the Mayans, which is the next group that we are going to talk about in this class. The Olmecs gave the Mayans corn. You can see some Olmec influence in Mayan spaces, including some mounds and pyramids. Again, the Olmecs are the first ones that built pyramids in Mesoamerica. The Mayan calendar is based on the Olmecs' two calendars that I'm going to talk about later. Ball games, the Mayans inherited from the Olmecs, and also the Mayans inherited the practice of human sacrifice and the importance of some religious aspects of the Olmec. All right, I'll talk some more about this as we talk about other cultures. Thank you. Have a good one, and see you later.